it's been certainly a watershed year for Lynas.
Yep, the $1.8 billion rare earths miner has been on tenterhooks with the Malaysian government over its plant licence. That's finally come through. It's beaten off a hostile takeover offer from Wesfarmers. Lynas' share price is up over 50% in a year. I asked CEO Amanda Lacaze what her latest pitch to investors is all about.
My pitch never changes. This is an excellent business. It's exposed to growth markets. We have a unique market position and we have the IP that allows us to be successful.
You have, very importantly, managed to secure a 6-month extension up in Malaysia. Now, it wasn't the 3 years or even 5 years that you were hoping for. In 6 months' time, are we going to get this saga all over again with the Malaysian government, do you think?
I'm certainly hoping not. The licence conditions are quite explicit, and I think that the reassuring thing for us is they actually take a 4-year view of the business.
Is that enough time?
With the 6-year gate. Yes, we believe so.
In those 4 years, the Malaysian government is insisting on a new cracking and leaching plant being built in Australia. Now, at Diggers and Dealers down at Kalgoorlie, you had an announcement to make.
Yes, certainly. We're actually quite excited about it. And as I said, all the way back when we did our Investor Day in May, it makes good sense strategically. And I think any time that you choose to do something in a business, you need to make sure that it is strategically sensible and then it complies with, sort of the external conditions associated with the business. So for us to crack close to the resource is a sensible thing to do. Even when we're talking about the process steps, the interaction between what we do at Mount Weld and cracking and leaching is probably more correlated than the relationship between cracking and leaching and solvent extraction, for example. But as well as that, we avoid significant logistics costs, shipping material which is not useful material to Malaysia. So in all sorts of ways it makes sense for us to do it close to the resource.
Are we to read from your MOU with the Council of Kalgoorlie and Boulder that you are favouring a build there rather than up at Mount Weld?
Both locations are good. I think Kalgoorlie has an awful lot going for it. And as Australia seeks to take a more substantive position in the critical minerals value chains globally, some of what I have actually said to regulators and policymakers is that the idea of creating a centre of critical mass is a very good idea. And Kalgoorlie, with the School of Mines there, allows us to really work to build education capability as well as build greater infrastructure capability. So we are very excited about either location.
Do you feel that the activism that you've experienced up in Malaysia can be managed now and that you're on a better foot with the Malaysian government going forward?
Once again, it's another very frustrating thing. So, just after the licence was renewed, there was a call for a public protest in Kuantan. Now, the week before that, at the State Mosque, there had been a prayer meeting and information session because, the way that these communities work is a little different from here. We had over 4,000 people attend that function. There was less than 400 people attended the protest. So when we talk about whether we have the support of our local people, it is actually very clear. Our local people do support us and have come out publicly to say so.
Amanda, the Wesfarmers bid was at $2.25. Your share price is, of course, considerably above that now. How are you going to describe this incident in your annual report, which you're putting together at the moment?
Oh, gosh. I think that we would see this, and I see this like this. Wesfarmers is an outstanding Australian company, really excellent company. And simply what we had was wrong bid, wrong time, wrong tactics. And so I think it's something which happened and we've all moved on.
So you can pass each other fine in the Chairman's Lounge, you and Rob Scott, can you?
I would hope so.
The US-China trade war, that must be impacting your thinking in terms of production, your stocking. How do you see all that going forward?
Certainly that, as well as the regulatory situation in Malaysia and indeed political environments all over the world, feeds into how we think strategically. So part of what we're talking about with cracking in Western Australia, continued operations in Malaysia, but also our MOU in the US, is about diversifying our industrial footprint. Sovereign risk has increased everywhere. The situation between the US and China, we're just a business. We don't seek to take sides on these matters. That's way above my pay grade.
But you are the big producer of rare earths outside China, aren't you?
We are indeed, and there is no question that there are some in China that would probably prefer that we were not around. There are others, I think, who recognise that having a significant outside China producer is good for the whole market. You know, the textbooks are right, the more activity there is in markets, the more they grow. So we, as you know, have a very strong relationship with Japanese industry. The rare earths market there, processing and consumption market, has grown by 60% since 2012, directly tracks Lynas market share. So secure and reliable supply of quality materials actually promotes market growth. And we would hope that the same will occur in the US.
You've got this particularly strong relationship with Japan and your Japanese lenders, of course. You've just done a refinancing. How do you see your balance sheet at the moment? Because as I understand it, certainly in the US, your capital investment is quite light on the requirement front.
Yeah, so the restructuring of the loan with JARE is super. I mean, it's great for our business. It's now doesn't mature until 2030. It's got absolutely minimal principal repayments, and the interest rate dropped from 3.75%, which was low anyway, to 2.5%. This is actually most significantly a reflection of the fact that the Japanese remain our strong supportive partners, and by restructuring the loan we are able to accumulate the cash that we generate from operations to fund our various expansions.
And just to politics here, the Prime Minister recently was quite outspoken in terms of his message for business, and less of perhaps sort of flitting around the ESG space and more of a focus on workers. What do you make of that?
I don't think it needs to be an either or. Too often these debates are polarising. But when I speak to my people, I talk about our duty to our employees. And the first is that we need to ensure that they have a job. And that's one of the reasons why we've spent so much of our time and effort working through the regulatory situations in Malaysia. The second is that we ensure that they go home safely every night. And we are incredibly proud that in early July we reached a major milestone with 1 year lost time injury free in Malaysia, and that has continued. The third is that we should ensure that our people leave the company with more skills than when they joined. Our duty is to ensure that they are more employable if they choose to leave. Fortunately, most of our people don't choose to leave. Despite all of the pressures in the last year, our turnover remains lower than industry average. And the fourth, which I think is really important, is our people should share in the prosperity of our company. So once we started to be profitable, we implemented a whole of employee bonus pool. And under this, everyone shares equally. Whether they're a senior manager or a technician, they get the same amount of money, because my philosophy on this is that everyone needs to do their job well. And so it is a meaningful amount of money, particularly for our technicians and operators, and we're delighted that we have been able to confirm that they will be paid this year.
Amanda Lacaze, thank you very much for all your time.
Thanks, Tiki.